Well, we've been a constitutional monarchy since the late 17th century, and of course part of that deal is that the monarch, or indeed the close immediate royal family, should not interfere with politics that in any way could be seen to affect individual parties. Now, perhaps one of the most classic cases in the 20th century was Edward VIII, who during his brief reign went down to Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales, met thousands of people who'd lost their jobs in the steel industry. In fact, he shook so many hands in the end he had to change and shake with his left hand, and he said something must be done to get these people jobs. It was taken as a direct assault on the Conservative government of the day. And we could go on to Edward Heath, as many saw it, using the Queen to get us to join the common market, and things the Queen said during the referendum on Scottish separation. And we could, of course, talk about King Charles, who as Prince of Wales endlessly talked about climate change and net zero. But the intervention overnight from Prince William, I think, is the most direct political piece of interference that has international and global implications that I almost think we've ever seen. This is what Prince William said: "I remain deeply concerned about the terrible human cost of the conflict in the Middle East since the Hamas terrorist attack on October the 7th. Too many have been killed," he said. "I, like so many others, want to see an end to the fighting as soon as possible. There is a desperate need for increased humanitarian support to Gaza. It's critical that aid gets in and that hostages are released. Sometimes it is only when faced with the sheer scale of human suffering that the importance of permanent peace is brought home. Even in the darkest hour, we must not succumb to the counsel of despair. I continue to cling to the hope that a brighter future can be found, and I refuse to give up on that." Well, one good thing, at least he mentioned the hostages, because almost no one these days seems to talk about the Israeli hostages that were taken on October the 7th. But for him to call for an immediate end to all fighting is going to be seen by many in the international community as absolutely clear evidence that Prince William is saying to Israel, stop what you're doing. Some will see that as being given a free pass to Hamas. Many young people will say, hooray, he's doing the right thing. But whether he's doing the right thing or not, has he gone just too far with this? Should our future king intervene in this way? I don't believe that he should. I think he's making a very big mistake. Love to get your thoughts, please. Farage@gbnews.com. Well, I'm joined now by Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent for GB News. And Cameron, I have to say, what has this broke a few hours ago? What has the fallout been so far?
Well, I think it's clearly become very contentious. Many people online, and indeed GB News viewers, are disagreeing with Prince William, saying he has gone too far and overstepped the mark. Others are praising him and saying that it's important that he's made this intervention fighting for peace. It's an incredibly rare statement. I think it's incredibly bold of Prince William to go quite so far. Yeah. If you remember back to following the October 7th terrorist attack, his spokesperson released a statement where he talked about Israel's right to exercise its right of self-defense. That was not included in the statements released by Prince William today. Of course, in the last few months, it's become more and more polarising, more and more contentious. But I'm getting the sense he really wants to be neutral here. Yes, he calls for an end to the fighting in the Israel-Hamas conflict, but he also wants Hamas to release the terrorists and get critical aid into Gaza. But of course, it's a really fine and tricky line to tread.
Yeah, it is. Of course it is. I mean, look, as I say, I'm pleased that he's mentioned the hostages. They seem to be forgotten by almost everybody these days. But you say he's trying to tread a fine line. Well, why say anything, I suppose, in these circumstances? This is not something that directly affects the British Crown. Indirectly, of course, the implications are enormous. Cameron, this will be interpreted in every way as him telling Israel to stop what they are doing.
Yeah, and I think it's the timing that's really significant here. There's clearly fears that there's going to be an escalation in violence as Israeli forces move into Rafah, the southern city in Gaza. There's an SNP-led Gaza ceasefire motion scheduled in the House of Commons for tomorrow. But clearly, as future king, in a constitutional monarchy, he has to be politically neutral. But then the government comes out this afternoon, Nigel, welcoming Prince William's intervention. A Downing Street spokesperson says his message is consistent with the government's position, and we welcome that information. It's important we speak with a voice, with one voice as a nation. Royal sources tell me the Foreign Office was fully briefed before Prince William made this statement and went to the Red Cross today in London. So I'm getting the sense that the government is using the Prince of Wales as a bit of an asset here, the power of soft diplomacy in action. Whether or not that makes a difference on the ground is another thing, but we'll have to wait and see.
Fair point, Cameron, thank you. And some would argue, of course, the king was used by Rishi Sunak with the so-called Windsor framework. But that's another story.